Ed and Mabel Lawrence were just an ordinary retired couple when they first boarded the Ocean Serenity. It was meant to be a celebratory 2-week vacation after decades of hard work, a reward for years of saving and dreaming. But from the moment they stepped aboard, something felt different. The ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a world unto itself, free from the mundane stresses of life on land. The endless horizon, the gentle rocking of the waves, and the rhythm of life at sea felt like the perfect escape. One evening, as they sat on their balcony watching the sun dip below the ocean, Mabel turned to Ed with a mischievous smile. "What if we didn't go back?" she asked. Ed chuckled at first, but the idea lingered. By the time their 2 weeks were up, they had hatched a plan. Initially, they thought about extending their trip for a few more days. "Just a little longer," Ed said. "We've earned it." But a simple extension turned into something more. They began making subtle arrangements, ensuring their presence went unnoticed. While most passengers disembarked at the end of the cruise, Ed and Mabel remained. They carefully avoided drawing attention, switching cabins and blending in with new groups of passengers. Soon, weeks turned into months, and they began crafting a long-term plan. Their secret life aboard the ship required meticulous planning. They developed routines that mimicked the habits of other passengers to avoid suspicion. They ate at different restaurants, attended shows sporadically, and even made friends with other travelers, only to say goodbye as if they were leaving too. They avoided the crew's gaze, staying low-key and always on the move. "We're like ghosts," Mabel whispered one night as they walked the quiet hallways, admiring the ocean under the stars. Ghosts on the Ocean Serenity. Ed and Mabel became masters of blending in. Mabel would chat with tourists about their next destination, while Ed would casually ask about their adventures. They played the part so convincingly that no one ever suspected they had been on the ship far longer than anyone else. They would disembark at ports and reboard like other passengers, mingling with new groups each time. Every day felt like a new vacation, yet they never left. But their secret life wasn't without its challenges. One evening, as they dined in a quiet corner of the ship's main restaurant, a waiter paused, looking at them curiously. "Haven't I seen you here before?" he asked. Mabel smiled warmly. "Oh, we've been on a few cruises with Ocean Serenity. It's our favorite line." The waiter nodded, satisfied, but Ed's heart raced. They knew they couldn't afford even the smallest slip-up. Their downfall came not from the passengers or the ship's officers, but from an unexpected source, the laundry service. One day, a young laundry cleaner noticed something odd while collecting clothes from Ed and Mabel's cabin. The couple had been using the service regularly, but the cleaner realized they had been aboard for much longer than a typical cruise would allow. Their laundry patterns didn't match up with the usual 2-week turnover of passengers. The cleaner mentioned her observation to a colleague, and soon, whispers spread among the crew. Conversations over dinner breaks began to focus on Ed and Mabel. Were they stowaways? Part of some strange, unsolved mystery? As curiosity turned to suspicion, more staff members began keeping an eye on the couple. It didn't take long for the crew to connect the dots. One officer began reviewing passenger records and noticed the couple had never officially disembarked. Their names weren't on any recent passenger manifests, yet they still occupied a cabin. The officer quietly brought the matter to the attention of his superiors. One evening, Ed and Mabel were called to the ship's office. They had been expecting this moment for some time, but when it finally came, it still caught them off guard. The captain and a few officers sat them down, explaining that the crew had noticed their prolonged presence. The couple was calm. "We knew this day would come," Ed said. When asked how long they had been aboard, they shared their story. They hadn't planned to stay forever, but 1 year had turned into 2, and 2 into 10. Life on the ship had become their reality, a never-ending vacation where they didn't have to worry about bills, medical appointments, or family obligations. The captain listened with a mix of disbelief and amusement. "You've certainly made the most of your time here," he said. But he also knew their continued presence posed a logistical challenge. After much deliberation, he offered them a deal. They could stay until the end of the current voyage, but after that, they would need to disembark. For the remaining weeks of their final voyage, Ed and Mabel soaked in every moment. They revisited their favorite spots on the ship, the quiet reading corner in the library, the secluded deck where they had spent countless evenings watching the sunset. Every meal, every walk along the promenade felt like a farewell to the life they had known for the past decade. On their last night, they sat on their balcony watching the moonlight shimmer on the water. "We did it, didn't we?" Mabel whispered. Ed squeezed her hand, knowing exactly what she meant. Their story was one of adventure, love, and freedom, a life lived entirely on their own terms. Returning to land was overwhelming. The bustling pace of life, the noise, and the absence of the ship's familiar rhythm made them feel out of place. They had sold their home long ago, assuming their travels would be brief. Now, finding a place to settle seemed daunting. Every location felt too still. Lacking the endless freedom of the ocean, the world had changed in their absence. Technology had advanced, leaving them struggling to adapt. They attended workshops to learn about smartphones and apps, but the digital world felt foreign. Reconnecting with old friends was bittersweet. Many had moved on, and some were gone. Despite their efforts to adjust, the ocean's call remained strong. A year later, they booked a short cruise to revisit the ocean's serenity. Walking its decks felt like greeting an old friend. Though the crew had changed, the ship remained familiar, stirring memories of their hidden life aboard. Realizing their love for cruising hadn't faded, Ed and Mabel began planning new adventures. As they grew older, they reflected on their unusual adventure, wondering if anyone else would attempt what they had done. The world had become more connected, making such a feat unlikely. Still, they took pride in their daring past, knowing they had lived a life few could imagine. During one of their return voyages, they received a surprise visit from the ship's captain. Their decade-long stay had become legend, and the captain was eager to meet them. Over drinks in his quarters, they reminisced about their time aboard, the close calls, the quiet adventure they had lived. In their final years, they settled in a quiet coastal town, finding comfort in a small cottage by the water. It wasn't the same as the ocean serenity, but the ocean breeze and distant waves kept them connected to the life they had loved. Their story became legend among cruisers, passed down and embellished with each retelling. One evening, as the sun set over the water, Mabel turned to Ed with a smile. "We did it," she whispered. Ed squeezed her hand, knowing exactly what she meant. Their story was one of adventure, love, and freedom, a life lived entirely on their own terms.